The MVP race for 2020 will be interesting. Sure, right now, Lamar Jackson seems to be the front runner for the award before the season starts, but just ask Patrick Mahomes how hard it is to repeat as MVP after getting it for having such a historic season. Speaking of Pat Mahomes, will he have a Super Bowl slump after winning it and being rewarded with a $500 million contract? I think it's fair to say that the 2020 MVP race will be wide open and fairly unpredictable. Sure, you might think Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson's will be favorites, but at this point, we really don't know. And since that is the case, I have to ask, do the Browns have anybody that can compete for MVP this year? Well, let's discuss that. Depending on how you view the Browns roster this year, you may see a plethora of players that are capable of winning MVP this season. The Browns do have a good amount of star-level players, especially on offense, which bodes well for having an MVP candidate. So let's go down the list of guys that you might consider could be MVP candidates at the very least, and then talk about why they can or can't be an MVP candidate at the end of the day. Now we're going to start off with Odell Beckham here, and I can see why there would be a good case here to say that this is possible. Odell's finally healthy. The offense is going to be more simplified. You're going to have less wide receivers on the field, which is going to lead to more targets for him and Jarvis Landry than last year. And you're hoping that Baker Mayfield steps up, and obviously one of the main people that will benefit from an improved Baker Mayfield will be Odell Beckham. Here's where the case for Odell as a MVP candidate kind of hits its biggest stumbling block, and that's the fact that the level of insane production that's going to be necessary for a wide receiver to be a MVP candidate is above the ceiling of what I believe this current offense allows for a single wide receiver. There's not only the whole a bunch of mouths to feed narrative with all these guys that the Browns have on the offensive side of the ball. It's also just the fact that it seems like the run game is going to be the priority for the Cleveland Browns to start the season at the very least. It seems that the play action pass is going to be a big part of the pass game, and it seems that the opportunities for Odell to have these insane games and insane moments in order to make that case for a wide receiver to be MVP just won't be there. Maybe if he were in an offense similar to the New Orleans Saints and a guy like Michael Thomas who has those opportunities at maximum because of the amount of receptions he gets compared to everybody else in the league. But with him, with Odell, I just don't see it being a possibility that he's going to be able to have the production necessary in order to become an MVP candidate. And also you have this very weird dynamic when it comes to wide receivers, and why wide receivers just don't win this award ad nauseum is because in order for a wide receiver to get a lot of production, that means that the team has to throw the ball a lot, and when the teams pass the ball a lot, it's usually when they're down. So if his targets go up because of that, and he has a ton of production because of that, the team's going to be bad, which is going to make his case worse. And the better the team is, the more carries you're probably giving to Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. So there's really no scenario in which Odell can have the production necessary in order to cross the threshold to great wide receiver into MVP territory. Now, some may think, based off of just relative logic, that Baker Mayfield would be the most logical guy that could be an MVP candidate, and that's purely because he plays quarterback. It's also because he has an exciting style of play that lends itself to that kind of MVP style hype. But there are certain things about Baker Mayfield that I think are going to keep him from the MVP conversation, regardless of how well he plays. One, he throws too many interceptions. And I'm not saying this is, oh, well, Baker's a bust, he throws too many interceptions. No, what I'm saying is, even if Baker Mayfield throws 50 touchdowns, I think he would also throw about 18 to 20 interceptions. It's just who he is. He's going to take those chances. He's going to make tremendous plays. He's going to have interceptions. He is very much in the mold of a Brett Favre, and with Brett Favre, you're going to get a ton of interceptions. And while Brett Favre was able to win MVP back in his day, I don't think it's going to be possible for Baker Mayfield, because even if he puts up those crazy Brett Favre-like numbers in this offense, the interceptions are going to be held against him more than it would be against Brett Favre, because of some of the crazy touchdown to interception ratios that we have just seen in the last few years by Patrick Mahomes and by Lamar Jackson. So no matter what level of production you get from Baker Mayfield, it's just going to look less impressive next to those guys who are able to do it with less interceptions, and that's going to be one of the main arguments made. The second thing that I think is going to be a hurdle for Baker Mayfield and his MVP prospects in 2020 is simply the roster. And what I mean by this is, if you look at everything the Browns have, Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, Austin Hooper, Odell, and Jarvis, there's going to be a lot of people, if Baker Mayfield performs to that level and has production that qualifies him to be a MVP candidate, there are going to be people who automatically discount that and give you this specific argument. Insert any quarterback in that situation, and they would have those numbers too. Now, the validity of that argument, I think, is up in the air. I think a lot of things other than what you have around you affect how good a player can be. I mean, he had a similar supporting cast last year and he struggled. So if this year he does well with that cast, just add it with the offensive line, I don't think you can simply make the plug and play argument that some are going to make. Nonetheless, whether you agree with it or not, that's the argument a lot are going to make, and that's going to be an argument that is going to carry a lot of weight with people who don't necessarily watch every single Browns game or are really deep in with the Browns. So, and then you add that on top of the fact that Baker Mayfield is just one of those guys to where he would have to legitimately be perfect in order to win the MVP. And that's just because he's polarizing enough. Like, Lamar Jackson had to essentially have a perfect season in order to win that MVP last year. And even then, there were people who tried to throw shade on it once he lost in the playoffs. Baker Mayfield is very polarizing, just like Lamar Jackson, and I don't see that coming to an end anytime soon. So with Baker Mayfield, even if he has a great season, there are going to be people so ready and so loud to make the counter argument to Baker Mayfield and act as if he's just benefiting from the players around him and that nothing he's doing is special, and that anybody else in that situation would do the same thing. Now, regardless of if that's true or not, that's the case that's going to be made against Baker Mayfield. And also, it's a huge question mark on whether Baker Mayfield can be that productive to even be considered, given that he had 22 touchdowns and 20 interceptions last season. He has a lot of room to grow before he can really be considered to be an MVP candidate. Even if it is the case that in 2020 he makes a massive leap to be there, there are going to be a lot of things that are going to be in his way. All right, the next guy I'm going to talk about is Myles Garrett. And while I think Myles Garrett is going to be close to a shoo-in to be a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, and I think he can have a great year, and I think the Browns are almost going to rely on him to have close to an historic year in order for this defense to be in that 15-10 sweet spot that you want a defense to be ranked in, I doubt he will even be considered for the MVP, no matter what he does this season. One, if you're looking for an on-the-field reason, I don't know if he has the help on the defensive side of the ball to get him to like a 20-plus sack number that would give him MVP considerations. I don't know if he has the support system around him in order to do that. Also, you have to address the elephant in the room. And while I don't think there would be much resistance in Myles Garrett getting Defensive Player of the Year consideration by the media, something tells me that the second Myles Garrett starts to be mentioned in MVP consideration, then the whole Mason Rudolph situation and the whole fight that happened with him will start to be used against him and start to be the main reason for an argument on why Myles can't be considered to be the first MVP on the defensive side of the ball since the 1970s. So, yes. Does Myles Garrett have the talent and the ability to be one of those guys that can be considered for the MVP even on the defensive side of the ball? I wholeheartedly believe he himself has that potential and that he can do it. Do I believe everything around him is going to align in order for that to happen? I seriously doubt it. Now, even though Nick Chubb plays running back, a position that people don't value more and more as the years go on, I think he does have the best potential, and he's the only player on the roster currently that has any potential to become a serious MVP candidate in 2020. And yes, I understand he plays running back. I understand that the position is being undervalued more and more as days goes on. But despite that, running back is the most common position to win MVP outside of quarterback. If you're a guy like Adrian Peterson, you can have a record-setting year and get serious MVP consideration. I think the same thing can happen for Nick Chubb. Now, obviously, for Nick Chubb to be considered for MVP, he's going to have to rush for over 2,000 yards. Now, is that possible given the current situation the Browns offense is in? There are a few roadblocks. Kareem Hunt is not going to go carryless throughout the season. You're going to have to give him touches that are going to cut into Nick Chubb's touches. You're also going to have to get the ball in the hands of Odell, Austin Hooper, and Jarvis Landry, and Baker Mayfield. You're going to need that in order to win. This is not a one-dimensional offense, and this is not on the surface a one-dimensional offense. And the last time a running back got serious MVP consideration, I believe, was Adrian Peterson in 2013 or 2012, one of those years. And that team had absolutely nothing but Adrian Peterson on offense, so he was the whole offense. And in Nick Chubb's case, that's simply not going to be the situation. He has a ton of weapons in the pass game as well as other weapons in the running game. So the likelihood of this, given that the last time this happened, it was in a situation where the running back was literally the entire offense, does seem lower. But also keep in mind that Nick Chubb had almost 1,500 yards in a season where the offense was not good. They were not focused on the run. They had one of the worst head coaches in recent memory. They had all those options on the pass game and focused on those options even more than they are going to be doing this year. And they had a terrible offensive line on top of that. So, given the fact that his carries are going to go up this season, and not only are those carries going to go up, the quality of those carries are going to go up significantly, because instead of running behind Chris Hubbard, he's running behind Jack Conklin. Instead of running behind Greg Robinson, he's running behind Jedrick Wills and Joe Bitonio and J.C. Treader, etc., etc. It's just a much better situation for him to be, given the fact that the Browns are going to run the ball a lot. Given the fact that if this offense clicks, they're going to be in situations where hopefully they have leads late in games, which is going to pad Nick Chubb's stats even more. And given the fact that the whole pandemic situation has created a situation where an NFL offense is probably going to want to start out at the beginning of the season to do the most simple thing as possible, which is run the ball, because there's just simply not going to be enough time to coordinate a complicated pass game and get that ready to be on the field with how shortened everything's going to be in the offseason. Then you see a situation where Nick Chubb can seriously make a run at that 2,000-yard mark. I don't think it's impossible. I think it's the most likely possibility for any Browns player to be an MVP candidate. That is why I think Nick Chubb is going to be the most likely guy if anybody on the Browns, and it's not a guarantee anybody on the Browns becomes an MVP candidate, but if anybody does, I think that guy will be Nick Chubb. That's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Do you think somebody else on this team has that potential? Let me know down below. But again, guys, thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload. And again, guys, have a great day. Have a good night.